Hi everyone, welcome back to another exciting and inspiring episode of On Location with Zara Durrani. Today we're here in the beautiful vegan restaurant in the heart of Kitsilano on West Broadway, Folk Restaurant, and we happen to be here on their off day, so we're very grateful to be filming here. Joining me is someone who is a dear friend, someone who truly inspires me, and I hope the conversation you're going to find inspiring as well. She's an award-winning producer, director. You've seen her work on CMT, CBC right now. Currently, one of her projects can be seen on CBC, which we will dig into later. And she's also not just like that work isn't busy enough. She's really busy developing an app. So we're gonna dig into everything from film, starting out in the film industry, as well as a tech entrepreneur with none other than Vancouver's 40 under 40, Natalie Boll. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for waking up early this morning. It's 8 in the morning here, but you know, in film, in order to be on set somewhere at 8, you need to wake up at like 5:30 in the morning. I woke up at 5:30 today.
I woke up at 5:30 as well. But I usually spend a few hours with my coffee doing emails and work. But it's nice to get out of the house.
And you're adjusting the time zones because you've been traveling.
Yes.
And so we're so excited to have you here. We weren't sure we would be able to get Natalie because she's flying out tomorrow. However, with everyone who joins us on the show, I really like to talk about their beginnings because for me, it's that story that I find truly inspiring is that what inspired someone to say that, hey, I'm going to pursue this artistic life, that I'm going to create work that people find entertaining, whether it is music videos or lifestyle content, television shows that people can watch and perhaps disconnect from their lives, or documentaries where you go and film someone for years because you've done so many different things.
Yes.
So how did you initially get started? Where did you get the bug from?
Well, I think I had the bug very early on. So when I can imagine as young as 5, I was getting all my stuffed animals, putting them out, doing displays. I would be going around my kitchen pretending to do commercials. So I was always into film and television. I loved it. In the beginning, I thought more of theater. I loved live performance. So I actually started out dancing. So in grade 9, I moved to the Langley Fine Arts High School and pursued major in dance. And from there, my plan was to move to New York, which I did when I was 18, to pursue theater and dance, more performing arts. But really early on, I realized my skill set was actually producing. I didn't even know what producing was.
So that's what I want to dig into. Obviously, I know, you know, for people out there, that's the question I get asked a lot. What is a producer? And there's so many different types of producers.
Yes.
What does a producer do if someone was to ask you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I didn't understand what it was. And early on in school, I started getting all the actors. I would get a script and then I would get the actors to perform and I would get the film crew to film it. And I just started organizing all these productions. And my professor pulled me aside and he's like, "You're a natural producer." I'm like, what is that? So basically there is different levels of producer, but a line producer, there's executive producer. So most of the jobs I was a production manager or a line producer. And you're really hiring and managing the entire production. So when you're a line producer, you're often involved in hiring all the key positions on the film. And as an executive producer, you're more on the financial side of things. You could be even part of a network on board, or you're helping to finance the production and put it together. Whereas a line producer is very logistics based. You're basically managing every line of the budget, which I loved. And I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I didn't know what it was either until I started. And then that set me on a whole career of production managing and producing. As soon as I learned it, I never went back in front of the camera.
Interesting. I feel like I'm more of the looking at the bigger picture, getting the things, but I really need someone to help do the little things, you know, where it's like filling out the docs, like doing, that takes me time to be like, that's the least on my list of things that I want to do, but I do need to do that as part of my work. So to know at a very young age that you wanted to be a part of the entertainment industry, that's really fascinating, because for so many individuals, you know, it's like it takes like trial and error over the years to truly figure out who you are and what you really want to do. You wanted to be an actor in the beginning and then decided that you get this vision of how you want the shows to go, and then you started moving solely in that direction and making the firm decision of, okay, I'm not going to be a performer, but I'm going to work with performers.
Exactly.
And how has that been for you? Because obviously it's been a very fruitful career. You've worked on projects that have taken you around the world, that have won awards recognition at Sundance, at TIFF, in Berlin. How does that feel, like looking back at your career?
Wow. Well, the career's still going, but looking back on how it kind of started and how it's evolved, it was really interesting, because it wasn't exactly how I imagined my career, but I would say that I would lend a lot of the inspiration from actually going to Langley Fine Arts, because until I went to that school, in traditional education, a lot of times you're not taught that you can have a career in arts. You know, you do see celebrities and, oh, you think that they have a really great career and they've made a lot of money, but you don't see like a practical career in the arts where you can make a living and have a career. So going to Langley Fine Arts opened my world up to, you can have a career in arts. This can be your main focus and not a hobby. Because until then, a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, that's a nice hobby, and then get a day job. And so being a part of Langley Fine Arts, going there in grade 9, totally changed, gave me confidence, and that really helped me in the career. And now looking back, everything that I wanted to do ended up coming to fruition. But I don't know if I would have had that courage if I hadn't gone to Langley Fine Arts School.
Are they still around?
Yeah.
I think they need to have you come and speak because I hear you talk about them a lot.
Yeah.
I want to touch base a bit on, you know, being a woman leader, because being a producer, being a director, being a production manager, those are leadership roles.
Yes.
You know, you're working with a crew. Mostly it's like, you know, as you see here, my camera operator, Julian, he's a man. We're working with a lot of men. How was that for you? I mean, you've been in the biz for a few decades now.
Yeah.
And how was that for you then versus now? And, you know, taking the leadership role at a very young age and leading crews.
Yeah, so it's really evolved how I've thought about women in leadership. And I always have worked with majority men on all of my positions and projects. A lot of times when you're in the key management positions, you're working with majority men. And a lot of the management styles and the way I approached management, I thought that it was unique to me. And some of my insecurities I also thought was unique to me. Recently, last year, I took a course at Oxford University, Women Leadership, and it was so amazing to learn that my insecurities or my way of management was almost like normal across women's leadership. So it was really interesting to see different things, like they explained that women have a hard time negotiating on behalf of themselves. They're way better at negotiating on behalf of somebody else. And I found that throughout my career.
Like negotiating financially or
financial positions, all sorts of different negotiating within business. And I thought that was myself. I didn't identify that that was a thing that women deal with in leadership. And throughout the course, we learned a lot of the difference between men and female in leadership. For me, in film, and now in tech, which is even more male dominated, I want to really change my approach. Now that I've been in management for over 20 years, I've really changed the way I approach leadership. Before, I was really, this is how it has to be done. I was mentored by people that were very strict and there was a hierarchy to a film set, and this is how it is.
And you're probably working with all men who are mentoring you.
Yes, and so I thought, okay, well then when you're a producer, when you're a manager, when you're an executive, this is how you handle production, this is how you handle this executive position. You're the hierarchy, everyone has to do these long hours. The project is the most important thing compared to anything else. And
your life doesn't matter.
Your life doesn't matter.
Whether you sleep or not, or
No.
go home to your kids, doesn't matter.
And that's a good point with the kids, because I have 3 kids. And my youngest is 10 and my oldest is 18, and then I have a stepson who's 15. And being a mother in film production, I had people tell me that they almost didn't hire me because I was a mother, because they were worried hiring mothers that they would have to go to an appointment. You're the always one who's called, and on a production set, you can't be like, my son's sick, I have to leave in the middle of a shoot. So they often and blatantly told me that they hire men so that they don't risk having a mother have to leave. And I understood it in a way, and I, instead of being like, what did you just say? I felt, oh, I can hide it. I can have a nanny. I can get all of my stuff taken care of. So often I never showed up ever talking about my family, because I didn't want it to make me look weaker so that I wouldn't get these positions.
So that you didn't have any liabilities.
Exactly.
You know, that your life and your time and your waking hours all belong to the production.
Exactly.
That this is number one, which is really interesting, because this reminds me of a conversation I was having last week on set. I'm working on a show behind the scenes, and they were mentioning that, I'm not sure if it's Sarah Polly or Sarah Paulson.
Polly.
Well, yeah, was it you mentioning this?
Yes.
Okay, that how they're having, okay, you were mentioning this, that
Yeah.
shorter days on set.
Shorter days, and being really, I mean, she's a mother, like really open to changing the way a set is run. I just did a production in Rome. We had male crew, but the key positions were all women, and we totally changed the way we set up a day. I was like, wait a second, I'm in charge of this day, so we're not gonna film crazy long hours. We're gonna have a proper lunch break. We're gonna change the way we holistically run a set. And we had a female host, a female director, I was a female producer, and not to say that men cannot work in this way, everyone can, but it takes a different approach from the high up leadership to say, wait a second, we're not gonna budget a 16-hour day. Not everyone works a 16-hour day, but the crew that's setting up and wrapping up often work a 16-hour day. There was productions where I worked an 18-hour day, and I thought work-life balance was a 12 or 14-hour day. It didn't even occur to me that you could have an 8-hour production day. And then
it's almost like a joke. Like, I mean, it makes me laugh because I remember at one point in my time when people would complain about working 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, and they couldn't wait for the evening or the weekend, or if they were complaining about anything. And I would just like look at them, and maybe out of envy or something, and I'm like, you don't even know what is hard work. For me, 40 hours are 3 days of work. Like, you don't even know what it means to work hard, because until I am, and perhaps this is me being influenced by the culture in our industry, that, oh, my work ethic is this much, that I am the type of person who will go above and beyond, and until I'm super exhausted and until I'm this, and this, then that means I'm just not working hard enough.
That's the key.
And by the end, by the time weekend would come, I'm like on the floor.
Well, you know, and this is what happened to me, is that I thought that I just had extreme self-control, and I was just really good at working 24 hours a day. So I thought everything was an opportunity to do another project. So I would be working full-time during the week on one project, shooting music videos on the weekend, prepping in the evenings. I never took a day off. And then I completely burnt out about 5 years ago. I didn't even know it was possible. I thought burnout was a weakness in film. It's like, well, you can't handle it. This is how certain people make it, is because we can handle it. And then I just couldn't get up one day because I'd just overworked myself, and having another young son and then working 18 hours a day, it was too much for me, and I never thought it was possible to burn out, but I did. And we see a lot of people in production are taking substances, even if it's just mild substances, because in order to wake up, I would talk to some pretty high level directors, and they would, not because they wanted to, but to keep up with that pace, you need to, it's so much adrenaline. When you're working an 18-hour day, like you said, a 9 to 5, I would fall asleep if I worked a 9 to 5, but an 18-hour film day, I have adrenaline going, there's so much excitement, there's so much energy that you don't even know you're working half the time. Like, you're working, but you're just in it, and it's such a rush. You're just go, 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 and sometimes you're working 3 months, go, 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 and then you come down. But during that, a lot of times, you need something to help you sleep, you need something to help you wake up, because when you have your adrenaline that high and then you need to go to sleep, sometimes it can take 2 hours to fall asleep because you're going through production. So that, I think, in the film industry is a big problem, but you're seeing a whole movement to wellness and mindfulness, which is amazing to see, to help naturally manage that. But I think when it comes back to leadership, we have to say, well, it's nice to have the wellness options to manage an 18-hour day or a 12-hour day, but why don't we just not have those long days? Why don't we schedule differently? And it's the same in tech. It's almost worse. The people are sleeping in their offices, and it's like, startup founders, yay, we're sleeping on the couch, and what's healthy about that? What we're making apps for wellness and then sleeping on the couch to produce them. What is that? Mm-hmm. So it just all needs to be looked at differently, I think, on how we structure media, because we've just normalized it for too long.
And accepted that this is just how we do things. It's interesting, on our way here, Julian asked me something. I was telling him about all these projects, and it's, you internalize a lot of this stuff, and that, okay, I'm working on this, this, and this. And of course, one of the questions that I'll get to afterwards that came to me is like, because there is an innate drive and fire, like, where does that come from? But going back to Julian's question that he asked me, because I'm telling him, okay, I filmed at this many festivals, I'm working on this other show, we're working on this documentary, and I'm doing this, and we're and you're almost like naturally high on all these things, and I'm so productive, and I'm just like, when we're saying about the work leading up to your burnout, my ears like perk up a little bit, because I know that is, and I think teaching yoga again for the last couple of weeks is something that is helping create balancing in my life, because as I'm teaching, I'm, practicing a little bit with them, but talking more about mindfulness and things that I know, but also realizing the importance of, having, like, yesterday we wrapped early, so it's like, okay, I'm gonna go down to the beach.
Exactly.
And I said, you know what, I need to jump into the water. I need to just cleanse the last couple of days, because I've been so on, like, even though I so love what I do, and it's such a fine line, right? Like, I remember that movie with Nicole Kidman where she's like trying to make it as a journalist reporter, and like, to the end, what degree would she stop at to getting the big news, right?
Exactly.
To having the headline, the breaking story that's gonna get all the eyes on her. And for her, the line was like so blurry, because then you become addicted to the rush of the high.
Yeah, exactly.
So Julian's question was, what are you doing for your self-care? And I was like, wow, that's really wise for early in the morning. And, I was like, yesterday I took some time to myself. I had to go, sat down with a friend and on a log, and just sitting in the sun for hours, just sitting and talking.
Yeah, it's so important.
Just
and do nothing.
Jumping in the ocean with my dog, running around. The tide was low, and it was just like looking at the mountains at Spanish Banks, and just like the sound of the water. And people in our industry need that more than anything. But I want to go ahead.
But what I was going to say is, what allowed for that yesterday was we filmed the interview, but I had the crew on a half day. So I still had 3.5 hours of their time.
And see, my brain was like, Nat.
And
I'm
my
like,
old me would be like, well, I have them 3.5 hours still on the clock. I'm just gonna use it for B-roll just to yes.
That's where literally my brain was
Yes.
like, I'm like, Cole Harbor, West Hastings,
We can do
Georgia.
B-roll.
I know. I was like, I'm like literally.
I was like, I
wanted
can
to-
film Zara. I can film B-roll. I have
Yes.
3.5 hours of paid time. But then the new me goes, I'm exhausted. That interview was worth the half day. It was a wonderful interview. I'm going to the sauna. Zara's going to the beach. They're going home. They worked a long day yesterday, worked a day before. Done. You know, so that's the new mentality for me. And I believe that that extra time now today, we're all going to perform better because we didn't push
They have
ourselves to do
readers.
B-roll because we had 3 more hours on the payroll.
And probably they feel the gratitude, but in my brain, like I kind of wanted to be like, are you sure Cole Harbor is right there? We're like on
know.
Hastings,
Exactly.
like, you know, we're West Hastings. We can get like great footage of you just walking and asking you questions off camera. It'll be so. My brain was like,
I know.
I wanted to argue with you, but I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like let it go.
No, but this is what I do now. Same
Yes.
with Rome.
Yeah.
I had them on a 12-hour payday, and I filmed 8 hours. And we had an hour and a half lunch because we're in Rome, and we had an hour of pastries while we got ready in the morning. We had an amazing time, and we got everything done, and we were actually more productive. We were all feeling so much better. You the energy, you get the takes
They're
way
happy.
faster. You're happier.
And they're probably comparing the production and the whole set experience
Yes.
on set to other shows that you worked on. I truly believe it starts from top down.
Absolutely.
Like the energy of any show
Absolutely.
is the producers, the creators, the energy that they're bringing into.
Exactly.
Like if it's like more, excuse me to say, greed and money driven, and you know, if it's just that, the crew, like you can sense that energy, right? Like when
Exactly.
are you caring about the people who are here, or you're here just to do
Yeah.
what you need
Exactly.
at any cost?
Exactly. And it also, it is that. It's like do it at all costs, but at the same time, maybe with age, you start looking at your time differently and how precious it is. And when you realize your time is precious and the production is a part of it, but it's not your whole life, you need to balance. And you can do all the self-care you want after a 16-hour day, and you're still gonna not have enough time to unwind.
Yeah.
And yesterday was so important because I've been go. I needed that time off too, and I knew everyone else needed that time off. So it's really looking at the whole way we do production differently.
Thank you so much for sharing, and we'll dig into the project that we've been working on. You know, it's
Yeah.
been so lovely working with you on this. I want to talk a bit more, you know, before we dive into your tech app that you've been working on. I want to talk a bit more about your experience in the film industry, on your project that is currently on CBC, on the life of Bodick, which you know, is pretty much something that took years
Yeah.
of filming and years of footage and interviews
Exactly.
of following his journey.
Yeah.
And it's received a lot of recognition. So tell us about the inspiration behind that project.
Yeah, so the project is called Maker of Monsters, The Extraordinary Life of Bodick. And it followed the life of Bodick and the work that he was doing. We filmed actually over 7 years. We just kept filming. So we probably have like 3 more documentaries worth of footage in there.
Can you give us an idea of like how many, I guess 7
I
years,
don't
that's a
even
lot
know.
of filming.
I don't even know, but I have a case about this high of hard drives.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, I think that
How
actually,
did this story come to you?
well, actually, I was working on another project called Legacy for APTN with director Helen Haig Brown, which I actually went to school with. And we were working on that, and I met a woman named Letitia Fazakis, which ended up becoming a good friend. But at that time, she was introduced to me. She has an art gallery, and she was managing Beau. And she's like, I really want to do a project on Beau. He's so amazing. He's so fascinating. She's worked in the art world for a long time. And she's like, but this is something special his story's special. The way he approaches art is so special. And she's like, why don't you just come over to my house and see some of his artwork? And I think you'll get what I'm saying. So I go to her home, and she's like, okay, down at the stairs, there's a mask. So I open the door, I go down the stairs, and it was a giant bookwiz mask. And like, chills was an understatement. Like, it was alive. There was so much spirit in his work. I was instantly like, whatever, we're working on this. This is amazing. I have to meet Bo. And then once I met Bo, you know, he's just so inspiring. And I think that's also, that project helped me learn the importance of time and how precious time is. And Bo really went against all rules with everything. And so filming with him, we couldn't push anything. You know, if he wanted to film at an event, we would go to an event. But then he would pull just organically, let's go talk to this person. Let's stop for a moment. We're gonna do this. Everything was so fluid and nothing had like a solid schedule. And adapting to that took time. But then once we were in that flow, it was really precious. And it changed the way I produced. Because I used to produce, and this was also with Legacy as well. With Legacy, we filmed up in the Namai Valley, up in the Chilcotin. And it was also very similar. Like, you know, we would come and do ceremony and then film. And that type of fluidity changes the way you run a production, because you can't say, I'm going to show up at 8, then we're going to film this person at 9, this person at 10. It was like, no, Bo was like, no, we're going to go here. Oh, actually, no, we're going to go here. And then we're going to film this. And that happened for 7 years. And we just followed and went wherever he felt was important to share with his life story. So we got so many amazing, precious moments.
Did you find yourself also changing as you're interviewing him and filming this? And because even as you described the experience, I can only imagine. There was this documentary-ish, it's supposed to look like a documentary, but something that Wayne Dyer did, and it was about around flow, around surrendering, but it follows the journey of like a producer or director in Hollywood who's like, you know, just super high intense, and I've been that person.
Oh, so have I.
No joke, like who's like, we have to do this and like, you know, just like, versus when that person starts meditating and like allowing things to happen, versus I think in our world it's such a fine line of like allowing versus the work you have to do. I think there has to be both, because we also can't just sit on our behind and like just expect the universe and the treasures and everything to come to us. We do have to put the work ethic in.
Absolutely.
And then trusting that things are going to meet you. So it's like, you know, as soon as you were mentioning ceremony and going to these places and really surrendering, and I'm sure you're there as a producer with this crew, sound, camera, you know, everyone. Yeah. I can imagine, like, you know, it's like my nerves being like, okay, we're here. You know, today, I'm like, okay, so last year filming, we have this marathon day. I said to Julian, be ready in case someone cancels on me last minute. But, you know, it's such a thing of like being ready and then letting go. Exactly. And the balance of letting go and having done the work is a fine line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's not about going la, 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 and not doing anything. It's like, you know, you have, what my technique now is I really ground myself. I meditate a lot, and then I have a vision of what I want. And I really plan what I want out of a project. And then I let it go. So you have a series of events that we want to follow, but within that, you have to be fluid. So if somebody doesn't show up, you're not super stressed about it. You're like, okay, well, there's a reason for that. And allowing that to flow is where you get the peace and where you get the harmony and where you get the magic. Because a lot of the times when that happens, I mean, I believe in the universe, something else comes that you would have never planned had you not just released to the universe. And so it's a balance of, exactly like you said, it's a balance of having everything scheduled but not being rigid and stressed within that schedule and allowing things to flow.
It's such a masculine and feminine. My question for you is, when did that shift for you? So before I even ask the question, I want to mention, over the last year and a bit, you and I have been talking a lot. I've known Natalia, which when I first met you, you went by Natalia. I've known her for like over a decade, and I remember I knew your credentials before I met you. I don't even think if I've ever told you this on, because we leave each other these long WhatsApp voice notes, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you. And I'd heard of you and the work you've done, and I was like, oh my God, like I want to learn from this person, and who can this person like introduce me to? And like I think automatically I put you on like this pedestal, and I was like, wow. And also I think energetically, like over a decade ago, someone who's doing a lot of different projects, you're vibrating at a different frequency because your time, your mind, everything, your waking hours operate a little bit differently. Your aura when you enter into a room is a little bit different. And I remember when I first met you, I was like, oh my God, I want to be like her one day. I want to, be like working on these projects. I think you were working on music videos, and you were working on all these shows and doing all these things, and getting to know you on a deeper level, especially over the last year and a half. And just asking you for guidance, but of course friendship, but a lot of guidance. Like I feel like I've learned so much in the mindset part, because I think a part of me is so much in the doing part. Like just go, work, versus the mindset of like what you're saying, like resting and trusting. Like, whenever I'm doing some travel plans and you're like, well, maybe it's not meant to be, Sarah. And I just want to be like, no, but it is meant to be. It is. I will make it happen.
But you made it happen.
Yes.
So it was meant to be.
Yeah. So my question for you is, when did that shift happen for you, and where did you get the realization and the inspiration that I think I'm not going to cause myself this pain, whether it's physical or internal, emotional, whatever, and I'm going to allow things to happen as a creator, as a producer. And part of this, and not to get super woo-woo, but we do get spiritual on our show, is like trusting in the universe.
Absolutely.
Trusting that if this is your journey and you're meant to do this, because you've been doing this for a few decades now, and you've received recognition. And I think you've taken the same principles of that, and then now working on the app, which we'll dig into. But my question in a roundabout way is like, where did that come from, that understanding and the realization that, because the way you describe that, okay, you lay it out, you do all of this, where did that come from?
Well, I think I had that mindset very early on, but I lost the way when I started to conform to what I thought I needed to do in production. So it was really finding it back. But when I really started, I think the project with Bo helped a lot, because you want to do a film and you want to get it on air in 2 years. You think, okay, I'm starting now, I want it on air in 2 years. And when you're filming for 7 years, you have to trust. You have to trust timing. You have to trust that what you're doing is for a greater reason. And I think the next kind of big step for me really trusting the universe was looking back at my career. And when I first started, I really engaged with that inner voice of, this is what I want to do, against everyone telling me, there's times where you have no money when you start in film, like you're volunteering on productions, you're learning, I went to school in New York, which was very expensive, you're doing all of these things, and people are like, oh, you really want to do that? Oh, you could just get a job here in the office and you could make good money. Why are you doing this to yourself? And you really have to trust it. So I had recently, which you know about, a really full circle moment when I moved to New York when I was 18. I had a full vision of what I wanted to accomplish in my life. I showed up at 18 with nothing, like nothing. I was body doubling. I was doing, at 18 I was doing body doubling, which gave me money so that I could go. But I had very little money in New York. So I was sewing my own clothes. I was really, really on a tight budget. And seeing now, going back with my daughter for her 18th birthday, I looked back. I was in a nice hotel. I was in a totally different position in my life. And I was looking back at myself at 18 when I had arrived, the journey that I had imagined when I was living in New York that I would have. And everything that I had manifested had come true, but in a totally different way than I had imagined. So the end result was exactly what I had manifested when I was 18. But all the steps and all the journeys and all the things that happened in between were completely not what I thought. And so that's the trusting. It's like having that bigger vision, that bigger manifestation, and then trusting the steps. And I really just like constantly go back, rooting, and go, okay, what is the goal? And then I go step by step by step to that goal.
That's something I find very inspiring about you. I remember, we'll switch gears to talk a little bit about Tribella. I remember we were walking in the rain.
Yeah.
And, and you're just like, I have this idea. And I think, I do believe that I consider you as one of the closest people in my life, but also someone who I look up to, who inspires me, and then seeing you do things like just one foot in front of the other. Good day, bad day, whether you're afraid or discouraged or whatever, just taking the next right action. It almost sounds like that's like an inner guidance. I don't think that's something that can be taught. That is like
it's listening.
It's grit, and it's listening, and it's like, doesn't matter if someone's like an artist or a doctor or an entrepreneur or just stay-at-home mom. It's like listening and doing the next right thing. And that's something that you've told me over and over again.
Yeah.
Just like make the next step. Like, I still haven't written my script, but I shared a few ideas with you, but I keep working on other projects and making the next thing. But I feel like, hearing and seeing that how, whether it is you're applying for grants or contacting people or doing this, it's always like every day making one little step that's going to take you forward.
Exactly. And that's, just to say, I get a lot of inspiration from you as well. Yeah, lots. And I really appreciate having that ability to have that friendship, and I think we learn from each other, and I love your wellness and what you've taught me with that. But you're absolutely right. It's just learning that it's just one step at a time. And I think there's a lot of conversation around that now. I think people are really opening up to the fact that it's just these tiny steps that go towards a big goal. And that's what I've been doing and manifesting. And I just double down and do it even more now.
Before we dig into Tribella a bit, I want to talk about World's Weirdest Restaurant.
Yeah.
So you had crews working that, you were sending them around the world. You've shared some interesting stories with me. Like, I love the name of the show,
Yes.
World's Weirdest Restaurant. Like, tell us about that.
Well, that was a long time ago.
I know.
Yeah. So, no, I was the production manager on that project, and it was the season 1 that I worked on, and it was for Perperni, a local production company in Vancouver, and basically the production went all over the world finding the weirdest restaurants. So we had one woman in the production that was just researching strange restaurants, and then we would just go to Japan, had amazing restaurants, it was like monkeys serving and.
Excuse me?
Yes, and one was in a
Japan?
jail. Yeah, one was in a
my
jail. And then we went to Taiwan and did modern toilets where you literally are eating your ramen out of a toilet and everything looks like you can imagine, like the ice cream served in a mini toilet. So there's some really weird restaurants. And then I think it was Arizona, we filmed at the Heart Attack Grill where everything is so fattening.
Heart attack.
And the waiters are all, the servers are all dressed as nurses. And it looks like a hospital because they literally put lard in their milkshakes.
That makes me sick. Sorry, my reaction.
Yeah. So there's some pretty amazing, weird restaurants in the world.
That's amazing. So let's talk about, just because I love the name, World's Weirdest Restaurant. So let's talk about Tribella. That is something that you've been working on, for the last year and a bit. Before you dig into Tribella, what does Tribella actually mean?
Well, the word Tribella, it took me a long time to find the right word to encompass everything that I was wanting to build. But Tribella for me is a female take on a tribe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to create Tribella, going so different direction from, even though you do have background in social media and marketing and using Facebook to do social media campaigns like back in the day, but this is a big 360 from directing and producing projects like documentaries and films. You don't think so?
It is and it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely a new part of that industry, but the skill set and what you're doing is so similar. Because when you're line producing, you're basically managing technical staff and creating a project.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I'm doing with Tribella. And on the technical side, when Canadian Television Fund, I don't even know how long ago, maybe 15 years ago, changed to Canadian Media Fund, we had to start doing online components for all of our productions. So at that point, it was so expensive because there wasn't these no-code sites. I taught myself how to code then so that I could do the projects on my own and not constantly have to hire people. So yes, it's completely new, but a lot of the skill sets are coming over to this. And I feel that everything kind of prepared me to come to this point.
And of course, you're doing quite well with it. Like you've gone to these summits, you were at the Web Summit. So what inspired the creation of Tribella?
Well, I think a lot of things inspired the creation of Tribella. I really was looking at what was happening with social media, and I felt that I kept waiting for the media companies that have the platforms that are most popular now to change. And I was like, I won't have to get involved. They're going to change. I even at one point had a change.org campaign to try to get rid of anonymous apps. But I really felt that they were aware of the harms, and it was only a matter of time before the change was going to happen. And then I just kept hearing more and more and more problems. And I really felt that it's time for a change. So the inspiration for Tribella was looking at the online harms that we're seeing and imagining how it can be done completely differently. And that's where the inspiration for Tribella is, and really the philosophy behind Tribella is linking each harm that we're seeing and linking it to a design feature of the platform and changing the way we design with a human-centric lens.
And while working on that, you're also working on a documentary, which we've had the opportunity. Are we able to talk about the documentary?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, which you're helping me with, and I'm having a lot of fun, is because it's such a journey to build Tribella. I mean, someone told me I'm trying to boil the ocean, but I'm up for the task. So it's filming the journey, building the app, and all of what that entails. And then on the side, really looking for answering the question, is social media in the way it is right now a net positive? And what are the positive and negatives that are happening right now in the industry following legislation across Canada and globally? And really just seeing where this is all going to go.
And where does the statement net positive come from? Because that's something we've been talking about.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of discussion, especially in the U.S., around legislation for social media. And Mark Zuckerberg, which is in charge of Meta, is very much at the position that his platforms are net positive. So what he said is that there's so much good on his platforms, and he identifies that there are harms, but the good outweighs the harms. And I see all of these amazing things. I mean, you're on social media, and there's so much positive stuff on social media, but it's looking at, is it really a net positive, or have these harms become too harmful that is no longer the case, and exploring that. But that's where net positive comes from. And
it's quite fascinating and disturbing, some of the things that you've shared with me. You know, that we dig into your documentary, but of course that if someone was to dig around, you know, for like cyberbullying and, you know, all these anonymous apps that I've heard of that I did not even know existed, that people can hide behind while speaking ill of others in a very unkind manner.
Yeah,
you know,
I think that's one of the most problematic features of these platforms, is the ability to be anonymous or create fake accounts.
So how would Tribella stand out, and what does Tribella aim to do different than Meta to prevent that?
Well, the initial onboarding is the most important thing. It's having that security at the gates, so to say. So really looking at the way that the onboarding is to ensure that everyone is who they say they are right at the beginning, for both businesses and individual users on the platform. That is the most important thing.
Because I think right now on Facebook or Instagram or whatever you look at, there's so many fake accounts.
It's unbelievable. It's gotten to the point to say that it was reported that Meta removed 4 billion bot accounts in 1 year.
Wow.
And it's estimated that up to 5 to 20% of the platform falls under bots, fake accounts, or anonymous profiles. And when you're thinking about 2 billion active users, 20%, that's a huge number. Yeah.
And they make money based on the active users?
Yes.
Or based on the people using the platform at the time?
Based on the daily active users. It's directly correlated with their stock prices.
Interesting. Anyways, we dig into that more with your documentary and the work that you're doing. We're filming for that today as well, later this afternoon. I would love to hear, I know we could talk forever, because we do so on our WhatsApp messages, because we're on different parts of the planet,
our daily
podcast, different time zones.
Yeah.
For someone wanting to enter the film industry, you know, whether as a producer or as a director or writer, especially a female, what advice would you give to them?
Well, I think I went to Capilano University here. It was a great program. So if you wanted to get into production, I highly recommend Capilano University. And my biggest advice is to just go for it. And the film industry has so many jobs that you don't even know about. There's so many positions. There's so many ways to work in the industry. I say just get on set, you know, volunteer, find mentors, just start, and then your career can evolve. And really it's just, you know, taking a course is great to get your hands on, but if you don't have the money, because some people don't have the money for film school, it can get expensive. Capilano College was university, when I went it was college, was pretty reasonable. That find a way to volunteer on set. Just soak it all in. And when I was on set, I was watching every single person, what they were doing, you know, seeing all the different ways that everyone interacted, and you learned so much from doing. So I would just jump in, just look for an ad for a volunteer and just volunteer.
Yeah, and I think in our industry, it's also about, the jumping in part, right?
Jumping
I
in.
feel like my career has been like that.
Yeah.
Like everyone asks me, they're like, oh, did you get some production degree or like journalism or communication? I'm like, no.
Well,
It's just like I used to hire people who actually, volunteered for me, who went to UBC and SFU and BCIT to study journalism.
Yeah.
And they would come volunteer with me.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking, wow, you spent all this money going to these expensive schools, and now, because
you need the practical experience.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was the same thing. I went for performing arts. Even in Capilano University, I went for performing arts, but I ended up in production because I just watched what everyone did and learned.
Yeah, that was the same experience for me. I went to film school and acting school.
Yeah.
Acting school, so not like making the filmmaking.
Yeah.
Last question, looking back at your journey, what would you say are some of the most significant lessons you've learned about leadership and resilience? I know we've discussed that throughout our conversation today.
Yeah.
But what stands out for you?
I think, and I don't want to sound cheesy in this last statement, but everything is human-centric. So really humanizing leadership and really having empathy in leadership. And I think when you humanize and have empathy and create that as the core, which for me got lost sometimes, once you have that as the core, everything else comes into place. So really looking at empathy and human-centric leadership.
Amazing, love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks
I
for
know
having
we
me.
could talk
We could
for
talk.
another hour. I know.
More coffee.
And you have prep to do for your documentary today. So, and we'll have to do some hiking and all of that next trip. Thank you, Nat, for taking time to come out today. Waking up super early.
I'm always up early.
Yeah,
but getting out of bed and getting out of the house is another story.
Yeah, I love that. Same here. Well, thank you all for watching and for tuning in. If you found this episode insightful, inspiring, do make sure to comment to let us know. If you're watching on television, if you're watching it online, please do get in touch and make sure to follow Nat and Tribella. We'll just tag all that information there so you guys can follow along her journey and also stay up to date with her adventures around the world. And until next time, I'm your host, Zara Durrani. It's been a pleasure bringing this episode to you. We're filming here at Folk Restaurant, this beautiful vegan restaurant in the heart of Kitsilano. And you're watching On Location with Zara Durrani, produced with the support of TELUS Story Hive.